I got a sort of sense that they're people who really needed just someone to say something or just point out the elephant in the room.
Dadvertising. Oh, I haven't changed
Where
the theme
you
song
learn
yet.
stuff about dads
Yeah.
and agencies.
That's it. That's what we're here for. Speaking of dadding, right?
Yeah.
I was about to tell you a story, something I'm impressed by in my own life.
Mm-hmm.
And this is dadding, right? This is the reality of freaking running a business and being a parent. Because the parents understand parenting, and then you get the single guys and girls running businesses, and that's all they do. I was finishing up I was doing business calls on Friday, like client calls at like 1:30. At 2 p.m. I had to go straight out to the kids' kindy party. That's 2 hours of chaos and just kids in ball pits and unicorns and chocolate and nightmares. And then I come home. We've got no milk for evening and something like that. So I go to reverse my car out of the driveway. As I go to put it back into drive, it doesn't work. It's not going into drive.
Yeah.
Right? This is not an old car. This is a nice car.
Yeah.
And quite an expensive car. This sort of thing shouldn't happen. So I Googled it. And, do you have a manual or automatic?
I've got a manual, yes.
But, okay, so on an automatic car, often on the gear stick in the middle, the gear shift, there's a little trigger button. You have to pull the button.
Yeah.
And that button just wasn't going in. So when I moved the gear stick, it wasn't shifting out of park. And I'm halfway down the driveway, steep driveway, and we're in a nightmare here because my wife can't get into the driveway to park in the garage, and there's also a tenant who can't get out of the driveway. So I've got work stuff still happening because it's like 5 p.m. on a Friday. I've got kids coming home soon, and the tenant needs to go out, right? So I am Googling, while I'm putting my kids to bed, I am dropping Mary Lou, the tenant, to the station. I am talking to my clients and my team who are doing their Friday Arvo wrap-up, which I couldn't be a part of. I had to skip the Friday Arvo wrap-up. And I'm Googling how to fix a gear shift on a Range Rover, right? I had to go to Bunnings and all this stuff. Either way, Alan Howle, I fixed it. I took it apart. I took apart the gear shift. I bought a little screwdriver and I fixed the gear mechanism on my car.
Look at you go.
And I was so proud of myself. Whilst we were doing it, the fridge is broken. And so that was the reason I had to go and get milk, because the milk we had in the fridge curdled.
Yeah,
we realized everything was at 15 degrees. It needs to be at like 5 degrees.
Yeah.
So the fridge is broken. The car's broken during the Friday Arvo wrap-up. And it's actually a perfect segue into the theme for today, being emotions in business and
Managing
family.
Emotions,
because far out I was stressed while this was all happening. And I was just I had such a kind of a why me moment. Like, why has this happened today? The last conversation I had before I went to the kids' party was a client not continuing their contract, which was very amicable, and it was just not a good time of year for them. Yeah. And it's December's tricky for a lot of businesses, right? They don't have the cash flow they want if they're not in a consumer-based sort of retail business. So, and then just kids' party was fun, and then just all this stuff. But those parts of the evening for me, and the reason I wanted to do this show, the emotions in business, is that the time of day when I am most susceptible to stress and emotion is between about 4 and 7 p.m. when business is still running, right? Because I've got clients and staff around different time zones. Usually Sydney's in like the earlier time zone, so Queensland's behind you, Western Australia's behind you, Philippines is behind you, everything's behind you. So people still following me up. At that point, whilst getting home from work, I'm making dinner. It's kids' bedtime. You want to be present with the family, but your phone's still going off. And when something like the car breaks at the same time, it's just a real spanner in the works. And that's when I'm susceptible to stress and emotion. If something bad happens, or, in quotes, bad happens through the work day, I'm fine with it. I can deal with that. And I think we've spoken about before, you and I, how like when you sort of lose a client in your first year of business, it feels like the world's going to end.
Yep.
And you lose a client in your fifth year of business, and it's like, this happens.
Yep.
No worries. Depending on the nature of it. But usually it's completely fine. But there's still certain parts of the day where I really, really struggle. And so after this, after this recording session in 1 hour, I have my 4th session with a small business sort of mental health therapist specifically designed for small business owners.
Yeah.
And it actually came off the back of a conversation we had in this demo podcast a few weeks back, where you said you were having some really rough times and you called up Beyond Blue.
Yeah.
And I being sad is a failure. And and so I was super overwhelmed with just like, not business issues or family issues specifically, but the combination of the two and the constant being pulled in different directions. And I'm in like week 4 of talking to this woman now, and she's like really challenging me on
I love
my
this.
behaviors.
I
It's
love
sick.
this topic.
I'm loving it. I'm loving it because she's nailed down all of where my stress comes from.
Yeah.
And I'll give her an answer, and she'll be like, "Yeah, but you haven't answered my question."
Yeah.
And I'll go into my long, over talking story, and she's like, "Alex, did this happen? Yes or no?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah." and it's really, really good. And so I'm in a significantly better space this week than I was 3 weeks ago when I was having a really rough week and a rough month, based on the fact that I noticed that I was getting out of control of my emotions in business and family.
Yeah.
And something was kind of starting to bubble over. I didn't know what it was. And now, probably, honestly, like triggered by a convo with you, positively triggered by a convo with you, I am now managing it and feeling
good. I'm glad it
phenomenal.
triggered
Yeah, no, 100%, mate. You trigger me all the time. Just like your face annoys me. But yeah, man. So
there we go.
So yeah,
You got the buttons operating this week well.
blue, funny, green, sad. I think is purple ominous. No,
that's the crickets.
No, I think dark blue is ominous.
Oh yeah.
Exactly. So we're talking about emotions in business and parenting because obviously there's going to be times of day that you'll experience and the listeners will experience where you can't lose your cool.
Yeah.
And it's natural to lose your cool sometimes. How do we get around that? Because that's going to be detrimental to life in general.
100%. And and this is I love this topic because I've invested a lot of time and energy. So I think what you're talking about is, and I don't know, I'd love to understand what it was because I'm sure like when we've spoken, I've shared, and I'm happy to actually, I'll just quickly share this. Yeah. During COVID, I got to a point where life was fucked. Wasn't sure about which way I wanted to go, about, different choices and things like that. My business was suffering. I was suffering mentally. There was family pressure on, going a particular way. All these other things that I'm sure a lot of people can either relate to or not relate to, whatever, right? What happens is the pressure just gets so high that I think for me, I was ready, like I was going into some very dark places, and I was fortunate enough to be self-aware enough to go, I'm going down a rabbit hole that does not have an exit other than like, it's going to end badly. So
Did it remind you of when you lived in Penrith?
Not at all. Penrith is the Golden West. It's where the sun shines the brightest.
I like Penrith.
And it's the hottest.
Yeah, I like Penrith.
But anyway, the point of the matter was that I had to call Beyond Blue. From that point, I actually shared my experience very candidly on social media.
Yeah.
And that I didn't share it. I shared it purely for the basis of knowing that I'd had some conversations with other people who are in the exact same situation, and I just wanted to share my experience. As a result of that, I had some really cool people reach out to me and say, thank you for sharing. Like, I was either going through something similar or I can relate. But I've also had a lot of people who said, please, like, give me a call if you need help. And it was just really cool.
Right.
But then I also had a few, I'll say there was a handful of people who reached out to me really thanking me, going, if you didn't share that, like, just feels so isolated. And I don't like, thank you for just shining light on it, because I just I got a sort of sense that they're people who really needed just someone to say something, or just point out the elephant in the room.
Yeah. What year was this? This is COVID, so like 3 years ago.
So 2021.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So mental health conversations sort of started, but
sorry. What I was going to also just
Please.
off the back of that, they made a recommendation to go and see a psychologist, and I didn't. But what I did, thanks for the recommendation. What what I did do is, about a year later, I actually found a kinesiologist who does therapy type work. Yeah. For those who don't know what a kinesiologist is, it's basically someone still talks through stuff and whatnot, but the reason I like the kinesiologist is it was more positive focused, because in biz, I'm quite a positive person, and I just need someone, like, I look at it like a performance coach, right?
Yep.
I just need someone to keep, like, reminding me of my true potential, and just keep me, like, nice and focused on what I'm capable of, and work through stuff that's blocking me from my full potential. And so this kinesiologist, what they typically do is they find energy in the body.
Told you were gluten free.
No, but what they do is they find energy in the body that does not align with what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
So for example, if I'm, whether it's, trying to make money, and I've had experiences as a child where, something as simple as money doesn't grow on trees.
Yes.
And then I've embodied that, consciously or unconsciously, and it's now in my subconscious, but it's stopping me from moving forward. This is where a kinesiologist or therapy or whoever you choose to work with can really help. Now, I've worked with, I've had multiple business coaches. I've also worked with the kinesiologist for about a year. I'm now working with a cathartic breathwork person, which is sort of like breath work to release traumas out of your body. In preface, I've had a really good childhood. I had I grew up in a Christian family. Not that makes me good or bad. I was just is what it is. Yeah. And but those experiences have had me experience traumas and different things that generational things.
Yeah.
And just. Even the way, so we're about to talk about tantrums with kids and things like that. But even just the way that I deal with tantrums, and as adults, when I'm like at my breaking point, I can go for a walk, I can go for a drive, but your kids can't do that.
No.
Like, your kids are stuck in the home,
Yeah.
or they're stuck at school or wherever, and their only choice is to let it out there and then. In the car, in the shopping center, wherever. And so, I'm glad that our conversation sort of struck a positive nerve, because it's something that I definitely advocate, not only for men in general, all people in general, I guess, but especially men, and especially those who are in business, because if you can't, you need to be able to lead yourself and be emotionally clean in order to be able to take, some of the downfalls that you'll take, and clients who will, come back to you eventually and go, you're a really nice person, Alex, but this doesn't make sense for our business, or we're doing this, or we're closing the business down, or we're taking a holiday and we don't need more. None of that's personal. Yeah. But you can easily take it personal when your money's on the line, or your cash flow, or other things. But it's being able to be emotionally stable throughout that process as well.
And therein lies the big question. Yeah. And the constant progression, right? I don't think there's one answer. I love how open-minded you are of going to all those different styles of practitioner. That's awesome. I shit on kinesiologists because it's funny, but 100%. That's kinesiology, breath work, traditional psychology, the performance coaches, just continually progressing and working on yourself. Yep. And that is ultimately better for your employees, for your team, for your clients, for your family. And that is, that's you showing up as a dad for me.
You know what was really interesting? I think on one of your videos, I actually asked you a question, do you do you invest money into personal development? And then your answer was not at the moment, because having kids and having this life is just as much of a personal development course for me as anything. And Jess really, really liked that answer. So Jess is my wife. Yeah. She helps us manage the videos and everything else as well. And she loved. Have I told you that before?
You have, yeah. It's good. I'm boots on the ground. You know, it's in the trenches, real life experience, and business. You learn about, in both of those jobs, business owner and dad, there are so many areas you have to master and learn from on a day-to-day basis, and you never master any of them. And so the tantrum thing, let's talk about that, because my kids are 3-year-old twins, and your kids are 6 and 8.
Yes, Ruby will turn 9 on Saturday, but yeah, 6 and 9. Yeah, 6 and 9. Yep.
Is she a little bit salty about Christmas and birthday?
She doesn't understand that part yet.
Right. Okay.
I think in time she probably will, but we try to really emphasize that her birthday is her birthday. But yeah.
Even though it's 2 days before Christmas. She's
never came to us and said, why is this? She's never had that conversation, but I'm sure we'll get that at some stage.
When it's... Well, my dad and my wife are within 3 weeks after Christmas, and I just figured out what to buy you. Now we're going to buy you something else.
Yeah.
Nightmare.
Yeah.
Anyway, so one of my daughters is really, really chill, and one of them is quite clearly very intelligent and very emotional. And so she's cried a lot since she was a bub, but now she's like 3 and she's a little bit bigger, and she has these tantrums that are just bonkers. From what I've experienced, she was the first kid I've ever held. Like my own child was the first baby I've ever held. I've never had experience with kids. My wife is a preschool teacher, so she's very experienced. So when a tantrum happens, this is what I mean by personal development. That is just like peak emotional management.
Yeah.
And when they were younger, in their kind of first year and a half, when they were sick or when they were I couldn't get them to shut up and stop crying, I would definitely, some anger would arise in me, like maybe at myself, maybe at them. And now one of her tantrums I can deal with easily. If we're in the house, in the bedroom, I can actually deal with it better than Ali. But I had to get to that point. And it's interesting that with the emotional management, I'm much better at dealing with a full-scale meltdown than I am with dealing with when she's just being a bit of a shit.
Yeah.
You know, put them to bed and they just keep messing around and ask you to come back in, and you leave and you come back in, and then they're out of bed and they want a different book or a different T-shirt. That level of fuckery, yeah, that gets to me.
Yeah.
But when she's full-blown meltdown, I can kind of deal with it. I kind of switch into who I need to be.
But you know what's interesting? And there was actually a study done that kids are worse off for they act worse for their mothers than they do men.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've seen that recently. But what I find interesting is when Jess is out, like let's say recently Jess went up for a trip to Brisbane to go and see a friend for a weekend, because I'm out all the time.
Yeah.
I was like, is it like, I wanted to be really clear, like, is there anything that you want to do? She's like, I'd love to see a friend. Great. Like, book it. Let's do it. Like, I want to give you some time out away from the kids. The kids were so well behaved while she was gone, because the thing is, I don't know whether this is because it's a standard that I've just set naturally. Like I wouldn't have noticed that I've done this, but I really just don't take shit. Like I have such a short fuse, and especially my daughter, who is now, she's going to turn 9. She's very intuitive. Like, oh, Dad's fucking pissed off. Like, everyone's sharpen up. My son doesn't give a fuck. Like he if he's going to be a little rat bag, he will be a little rat bag.
Yeah.
But he's also heaps funny. Like when he's happy, he's funny as fuck. Like anyway, they are so well behaved for me because I just give short instructions and they know, but I also give them lots of freedom, probably a little bit more than Jess gives them. But what I find is, talking about tantrums, and it's really interesting that you mentioned this, is coming back to that point I made before, is the kids will have like a little fight with a friend at school, or they'll have something happen. Like even when they're in daycare, like something will happen at daycare, they'll come home and they can't articulate it. Like they don't understand why they feel the way that they do. But they've had their own days. They've either gotten in trouble or someone, like even if they were doing something that they weren't meant to, and one of the instructors or teachers have told them off, they're like, take it super personal and all those other things. And they're like, you know, they're all like, it's the same as why I called Beyond Blues. Like think of it like the pressure cooker. Like you've just got all this pressure, all this, condensity, all intensity, all going on, and they just need to release it. And that was the hardest thing for me to learn. This is something that I'm so grateful that Jess has held the patience for me, because my natural reaction was discipline, like they're being naughty. Whereas she really helped me to understand that they're getting their shit out from the day, just like you have a worked up day and you need time. You can drive to the beach, but they can't. Like you can go for a walk, but they can't. Like they've got to sit there and work through it, and they will yell, they will scream. They can't throw shit or damage things, but they can yell, scream, make as much noise as they need to. They can walk around cursing at me, whatever that, but even that level of like what you're talking about, where they're letting loose, they're going absolutely ape shit, to be able to sit there and be emotionally clean and just watch them and just hold, like, whether it's like, don't look at them because they'll make them react more, or just giving them space, or, letting them like scream, like that blood curdling scream. And just letting them go. That's definitely not something that's just come naturally. Like you can probably attest to as well. It's something that's worked over a course of a period of time. But the more that you're able to do it, the more that you like, it's actually a reflection of your own ability to be aware of what you need. And going, okay, someone else needs me to just sit down, shut the fuck up, and just make sure they stay safe whilst all of this is happening.
Exactly. Yeah, and what's so great about the world today, the access to information that we've got, is that, before the freaking podcast recorder broke, so we kind of Googled what was wrong with it. And when the car broke, we Googled what was wrong with it. And in business, we'll always hire coaches, that sort of thing. In parenting now, you can kind of look this stuff up. And there's a bunch of, I shit on a lot, like, sort of mum influencers and mummy bloggers, that sort of thing, who are just perfect all the time. But the people I love to follow are kind of like the older, pediatricians, that sort of thing. And there's like some podcasts called like Making Toddlers Easy, which is amazing. And this woman's a grandma and a pediatrician of like 40 years. And so you trust that she's not in it for,
just making a buck.
Exactly. She's not in it she's selling an online course, which she bought, and it's awesome. But she's not trying to get free baby clothes from some organic bamboo baby company. And on the night of one of Ollie's massive tantrums, I was like, okay, this is where I say this is where personal development comes from, and emotion. I was charged the fuck up, and when I wasn't actually, I was drained, super duper drained, and just kind of stressed on the inside, but it didn't come out on the outside, which is good. And I went to the gym and I listened to this podcast, and it was, one episode was 5 things not to do during a tantrum. And then we were like, yep, we did that one. And it was, one was like, you don't kind of downplay the reason for the tantrum, and kind of say, oh, this isn't, it's not so bad, because in their mind, it is so bad. And then you're not understanding them. You don't say that they're making you sad or whatever, because it's not their responsibility to make you happy. You're a grown up. You don't,
and that's gaslighting, by the way. Yeah, if you were to do it.
Or, but we used to. It's like, look, listen, like, this is not kind. This is not nice. And so now we've learned from that. And then there's another one was don't and like you said, don't tell them that they're being naughty or there's anything, because they're not. They don't want to be like that either.
Yeah.
And it's really, really interesting learning that stuff and then applying it in parenting, in business. But you have to go through those problems before knowing how to solve them, because otherwise you wouldn't think about it.
Yeah.
You can't preempt every problem that's going to come up.
Exactly.
And you have to go through it the first time, however you go through it, and maybe the second time before you think, okay, I'll fix this. Like when you first lose a client, or when you sell a client and they have the freak out and the next day they call you and they're like, oh, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Yeah.
And you've got to go through them before figure out what to do. Yeah. Hence why Elon can be outwardly so calm when he's got the world on his shoulders and a shitstorm every day. Yeah. And you and I, or a person in their first year of business, might get really stressed over a $250 tax bill.
Yeah, exactly.
That sort of thing.
Yeah.
So.
No, and you know what? I think just, slowly wrapping this up, I think the two things that I've learnt the most is expectations, setting realistic expectations, but also communication, right? So there's no way that I would be where I am today without the communication that Jess gave to me around just being allowing me to learn through the process, because she could see that you're not being helpful right now, just fuck off.
Yeah.
And then the more that she reiterated and communicated to me what needed to happen, the more I was able to understand and actually support her and the kids during it.
Yeah.
The next one, or the other one, was just expectations, right? And it's funny how unrealistic expectations can create so much drama. We're talking about parenting, but you think about this in a business sense. I know how many people have set unrealistic expectations about making $1 million in a year, or trying to make, set these huge goals, and then get angry at everyone and anyone and everyone, including their own leads and clients, because they're not meeting their own expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And just being realistic with your expectations, being realistic about where you are, being realistic about what's going on. I know Jess, even coming into Christmas time, given it's Ruby's birthday, 2 days before Christmas, she will make sure that we talk through and walk through exactly what's happening. She's already told me, it might be we're going to leave. We've got a big gathering on the 23rd, and she'll say to me something along the lines of let's stay to a certain point and then go home. Yeah. Because we need to go home, make sure they get a good night's sleep, because they've got something on the day after, and then they've got Christmas, you know? And then that's coming into that Christmas period time and all those other things. But if you don't sort of plan ahead and set some expectations, sometimes that's where it can also go really bad. So having clear expectations and also effective communication, I think, are the two keys. And just learning as well.
In both, dude. Yeah, so many of our lost clients in the past have been through their expectations happening too high of what can happen in 3 months or whatever in business. And on the other side of the coin, so many times I've lost my cool with my kids has been when my expectations of them have been too high.
Yeah.
And especially with food, toddlers, they eat pretty well when they're 18 months old. I was feeding my kid kangaroo and veggies and all sorts, and then suddenly they go through this beige phase of just pasta and noodles and rice and bread for a year or so. And I get super annoyed at that. And I'm like, this is not good enough, girls. And Ali, who's a preschool teacher, is like, this is what every kid does, lower your expectations of them. It's going to be fine. And so expectations is amazing. Communication. I mean, how good's a good wife? You and I are just blessed as in this situation. We both seem to have super supportive, rational wives who will pull us up on things, and and when things are going well.
So having a supportive wife, absolutely.
Or husband, I'm sure, out there.
Yeah.
Partner, spouse, business partner.
I think that all comes down to communication, and there's so many things that you can do much more effectively when you've got those communication lines open.
Yeah.
And I think over a course of a period of time, the better you can communicate with your partner, the more that you can actually do and achieve as well. Because you cannot be I cannot go traveling interstate and do what I do without the support, love that I have back at home, knowing that she's taking care of everything else. And if she needs something that if I can, whether it's to do with money or whatever the case is, I'm doing my best. But yeah, that communication is so key.
I think out of anything, Alan Howle, and dear listener, just even acknowledging these topics and wanting to work on it, that hopefully puts you in a league above a lot of people who are just ignoring the fact that they could do better. And I hate receiving unsolicited advice from people, especially about parenting. Business, I'll take it, because business is, once again, not personal. I get very defensive if people give me advice I haven't asked for, which is why I hate mummy bloggers so much, because it just pops up on my Instagram. It's and people send it to me, here's 6 shows I won't let my kids watch. That's
Great.
your kids.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah, Michelle. And so, but I think if people have found themselves on this show, listening to this show, hopefully that's because they've got some, you're listening to this because you have an idea that there's some areas of your business, your life you'd like to improve. And by listening to just our stories and our thoughts on this, hopefully it opens up some of that awareness for you, because by all means, we are not perfect, especially Alan. I'm closer to I'm closer to perfect than Alan is.
Alex and the dog.
Alex and the dog. Alex and the dog. Throwback to episode 2. So good. I think managing the emotion in business, I think that initial conversation is huge. And so thank you for the conversation we had 2 weeks ago on that, which has now led me to be dealing with my emotions in business much better. And in parenting, what we're doing straight after this is we are actually we're getting help with that one as well. And it's a bit of a hit to the ego. Yeah, a lot of things are. Hey,
but that's exactly right. And you're talking about your experiences. I'm talking about my experiences. Not one shoe fits all. You've got to go through your own journey, because there's always things that you're individually going to be working on, and obviously different things that you're going to be focusing on at the same time. But the more that you can, the reason, I see it for me, the reason I invest so heavily into coaches and all these different things is I know that even today, I'm not living to my full potential, even with my health and all these other things, which is something that I'm very, very, very conscious of. And doing some stuff in the background as well. And so the more that you can just be the very best version of yourself, the better our world is going to be. The more that you get to enjoy the work that you do, the more money that you get to make, the more time and gifts that you can give to other people. And, there's a whole range of other things. So
as cliche as that sounds, right? Best version of you, but sometimes what people are trying to do, especially early on in business and personal development, is you try and be whoever you're reading about at the time.
Or be someone else, or just follow someone else, model someone else's success, but in the same way, but actually get caught up in trying to be them rather than model the success principles into their own DNA.
Exactly.
Because, perfect example, Alex Hormozi. Yeah. Right? In $100 Million Offers, a book that I highly recommend.
So good.
So often to a lot of people, talks about offering guarantees. Now,
tricky.
This is guarantees work in some businesses. They don't work in mine.
No.
Because, and it's just because he's successful and used that path does not mean that I have to. Learn what you have to. Take the different principles, the success principles, and apply it to your own life and see what fits. Some things will not fit in your business, in your life, and it's just working through what works best for you.
Skinny jeans for me.
Skinny jeans?
They often don't fit because my legs are wider than they are long.
Those little calves.
I've got baby calves. I've got big calves.
Yeah.
I've got big calves and big quads,
Yeah.
but I'm not very tall. Short legs.
There you go.
So jeans are an issue. So if that's what you were talking about, things that don't fit.
Yeah,
Or
that's
have I
exactly.
missed-
No, you got it.
Yeah,
That's exactly what I was
nailed
talking
it,
about.
nailed
Yeah,
it.
nailed it.
I was listening.
Yeah. Good job.
But what we can guarantee is that Dadvertising will be here for
Again,
you.
next week.
Again, next week. Next week. We're excited for it's the end of the year. We're excited. We're knackered. It'll get more knackering next week. And the week after, it's going to be that weird.
Well, when you think about it, when this podcast is launched, like this will probably be sometime either in February or January.
Yeah, I reckon sort of late Jan, early Feb, that sort of thing.
Somewhere around there. So it'll
hot.
already be past the Christmas time.
Happy summertime.
Already be in 2024. Hello. Hello, 2024.
Hello from the future. Hopefully your robot butler's brought you everything you need today. And AI hasn't stolen your job yet.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. You love those buttons. You really do. I see how much joy it brings you by pressing the button as
I've never had a soundboard available to me before.
I know.
It's so great.
So thank you, everybody, for listening to Dadvertising. We'll be back with another episode next week. I'm sure. Just hang tight for what it's about. We'll do some more planning, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
We don't know yet.
We don't know yet.
Winging it.
Yeah. No, we're not winging it. We have a little bit of structure, but anyway.
We just don't know yet.
We don't know yet. That's
We're on
correct.
a constant journey, a constant transition, and it's all we can ever hope for because the destination is never reached. And if you can learn to love the journey, Alan, that's what it's all about.
Wow, move over, Tony Robbins.
The secret. Who's Tony Robbins? Throwback to episode 2.
Yeah. So, all right. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Again, if you have any topics or anything else you'd like us to cover, make sure you reach out. We love your ideas and love your support. Yeah. So make sure you leave good reviews, subscribe.
Only good.
Only good. And we will see you next week.
Thanks so much, everyone. Peace out.
Ciao.